Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum ji. Today we will continue our discussion on KNN algorithm. In the previous module, we talked about the intuition of KNN. We formulated mathematics behind KNN algorithm. We also saw one demonstration in which we noted that as you increase the value of K, the decision boundary or the Voronoi regions become smooth, or you can counter the effect of noise in the data with the increase in K. And finally, we reviewed some of the characteristics of KNN. We concluded last module that KNN has two parameters, two hyperparameters, in fact. One is the distance metric, which you can use to determine, to quantify the similarity between two vectors in the feature space. And another hyperparameter was K, the number of neighbors which you can use to carry out your predictions. Today we will continue our discussion, and we will talk about the distance matrix we can use in KNN, and how do we choose the parameter, the hyperparameter K. In KNN, there is no learning involved, right? So we carry out the predictions on the fly using the training data. We keep all the training data, and for any test point, you find the K nearest neighbors in the training data, and you assign the label to the test point, the label of most frequent most frequent label in your uh, neighbors. So that was KNN, right? To measure the closeness between 2 points in the feature space, we need to define the distance function. In fact, when we formulated KNN, we defined this set as x. That depends on the distance function. So if you have a different distance functions, if you have a different distance function, you will get a different s, and s depends on the test point x. Right? So what are the distance metrics we have? We'll start with a very basic one, which you have seen multiple times, what we call Euclidean distance. Euclidean distance computes the distance between 2 points x and x dash. This is in fact a Pythagorean distance, which you have been studying since high school, I assume. Okay, how do we compute this distance? So we take a difference along each dimension, and we square this difference. We sum all the square of differences, and you take a square root, right? So this is the Euclidean distance. So I will come back to this notation, what we have here, right? So very shortly. Uh, and then we have another distance could be Manhattan distance. How do you interpret this definition of Manhattan distance, right? You take a difference along each dimension, right? In Euclidean distance, you square this and then you sum. But here, we're not squaring it. We are just taking absolute value of the difference along each dimension, और उस सबको sum कर दिया आपने, right? So this is what we call Manhattan distance. There is a reason why do we call it Manhattan distance, and I will come to it very shortly. Right? This is also called a taxi cab metric. This is also called rectilinear distance or a city block distance. So there are different names to this definition of distance. Okay, now I think I can comment on this notation here. Right? So this is in fact a notation of the norm of a vector. Right? So in the Euclidean setting, we have a 2 norm of a vector x minus x dash. In Manhattan distance, we have 1 norm of a vector x minus x dash. So we will generalize this norm thing in a while. If we want to see the difference between Euclidean distance and Manhattan distance graphically, we assume that so we are in two-dimensional space, and we have on x-axis we have x1, on y-axis say we have x2. Right? Let me say this is x1 and this is x2, and say we have 2 points, point A and point B. Right? So this green line here, this is the Euclidean distance, and the red line, this blue and this yellow line, these correspond to Manhattan distance. Right? If you see, Euclidean distance is the distance of the direct path from A to B, whereas a Manhattan distance, my apologies, Manhattan distance measures a distance following only axis aligned directions, right? So you're either, when you move from point A to point B and you want to compute Manhattan distance, you're only allowed to follow axis aligned directions, right? So you cannot go the diagonal way. Right? So this is, you can also note here that equilibrium distance is unique, is the distance of a unique path from A to B, whereas so all of these red, blue, and yellow, so they correspond to the same distance, but you can choose different paths of the same distance. Okay, before we generalize Euclidean distance and Manhattan distance, uh, we can see the concept of norm, right? So as I said earlier, Euclidean distance is the two norm of x minus x dash. Manhattan distance is the one norm of x minus x dash. Let's quickly talk about what do we mean by norm here, because we will encounter this later in the course. So this is something good to learn. Okay, so we define norm of a vector. Say you take a vector x, which is in the d-dimensional real space, and you take p norm of a vector. We define p norm of a vector with this definition. So, okay, how do you interpret this? You take the value along each dimension. You take the absolute value of that. You raise to the power p. You sum all these values along dimensions to the raised to the power p, and then you take a pth root. Right? This is the definition of the norm, and we call it norm for p greater than or equal to 1. So given this definition, there is no restriction, right? You can take the value of p less than 1, but for p less than 1, we do not call it norm. We call it norm for p greater than or equal to 1, and this is because of some of the properties of norm. Right? These properties are very, very important. In fact, any function that satisfies these properties is called norm. So what is norm doing? So norm is taking input as a vector and giving you a scalar. So norm is a measure of what we call is a measure of strength of the vector, or is a measure of magnitude of the vector, right? So any function that satisfies these four properties, I'm going to talk about these properties. So any function that satisfies these four properties, we refer to that function as norm. And the first one is norm has to be non-negative, right? So norm of any vector should be greater than or equal to 0. Norm should be absolutely homogeneous. It simply means norm of a scaled vector is equal to norm of a vector scaled by magnitude of the scaling factor. Right? So if you have alpha, alpha can be negative or positive, but what you get on the right hand side would be always positive. So alpha you get an absolute across alpha. Third property, this should not be this alpha here. This should be only x. Sorry, I will correct this in the notes. So pth norm of a vector is equal to 0 if and only if x is equal to 0. Right? And finally, we have triangular inequality that states norm of x plus x dash is less than or equal to norm of x plus norm of x dash. You must have studied this in the high school in a triangular setting, this triangular inequality. Right. So finally, I also want to review one of the important property of one of the important inequality that is related to norm. And this inequality states that qth norm of a vector is less than or equal to pth norm of a vector when p is less than equal to q. Right? So what do you mean by this? So when you say Euclidean distance, so Euclidean distance is 2 norm of a vector or 2 norm of x minus x dash. And what about Manhattan norm? Manhattan norm is 1 norm of x minus x dash. So we can say Manhattan distance would be always greater than or equal to Euclidean distance. If I review the example from the previous slide, so we have this Euclidean distance and we have this Manhattan distance. If we assume that each block is of unit dimension, we have Euclidean distance of 6 square root 2, whereas Manhattan distance, which we compute like this. So 6 units along this dimension, 6 units along this dimension, that's great 12, right? So Manhattan distance is 12, Euclidean distance is 6 square root 2. Right? So I think that was all about norm, which you need to know for now. We will talk about this function later in the course, and we will talk about some more nice properties of norm or more nice uses of this norm function when we encounter this in the course. Right, okay. So we have defined norm. Coming back to distance. We have defined Euclidean distance. We also defined Manhattan distance. And now we know norm. So Euclidean distance is a 2 norm of x minus x dash. Manhattan distance is 1 norm of x minus x dash. We can generalize this, right? So, and the generalization is called Minkowski distance. So Minkowski distance is the pth norm of x minus x dash, right? And this definition is simply follows from the definition of norm. And obviously we require p should be greater than equal to 1, because for p greater than equal to 1, the norm satisfies those 4 properties. And when p is equal to 1, Minkowski distance becomes Manhattan distance, and when p is equal to 2, Minkowski distance becomes Euclidean distance. So you can have any value of p greater than equal to 1. You can have p is equal to 1, you can have 1.1, or you can have 2, and so on and so forth. If you keep on increasing p, in the extreme setting when p is equal to infinity, we call infinite norm of x minus x dash, and that is simply given by maximum of the distance along each dimension. So what do we have here? Xi minus x dash, right? So this is the difference along ith dimension. You take absolute value of the difference and you take maximum over all these differences, right? So this gives you infinite norm. So what is infinite norm? So maximum of the absolute values of the differences, right? This is infinite norm, and in literature, infinite norm is also referred to as Chebyshev distance. Right? So whenever you encounter Euclidean distance, you would say that is norm 2 of the vector x minus x dash. Manhattan, 1 norm. Chebyshev, infinite norm. And in general, p norm, when you use p norm, you call it Minkowski distance. I assume this is clear now. Okay. What are the interpretations of these distances? For example, Euclidean distance. In Euclidean distance, larger values are being amplified and smaller values are being suppressed. And this is because of the squaring operation. In Manhattan, the difference along each dimension or each difference is given equal weightage. Right? For p is equal to infinity, you only get the maximum distance along any dimension. So it depends on the application you are using. It depends on the applications you have. for which you are using KNN, you can use any of these distance metrics. And these distance metrics are only defined for continuous variables, right? So these metrics are defined when x and x dash are in the real space. When the feature vector is categorical in nature, we cannot use these distance metrics. To handle categorical variables, we will define another distance very shortly. For now, we note that these distance, this Minkowski distance satisfies these four properties. And in fact, these four properties simply follow the properties of norm. So if you know the properties of norm, you can use those properties to just write these four properties. The distance, obviously, it has to be non-negative. It has to be symmetric because norm is absolutely homogeneous. And distance of x dash is equal to 0, that is equivalent to the norm of x minus x dash is equal to 0, that is equivalent to x is equal to x dash. And finally, we have a triangular inequality. Right? Let's talk about how do we compare categorical variable in KNN, or how do we find distance between two categorical variables. So for categorical variable, we use what we call Hamming distance. And this Hamming distance is defined in this mathematical form. Okay, let me spend 1 minute on explaining this. So x is a categorical variable, x dash is a categorical variable, and you have xi minus x dash. Right? So when x is a categorical variable, we assume that x can only take two values. For example, yes or no. Right? So if xi is yes and xi dash is also yes. So when these both are yes, the delta would be delta, remember, Kronecker delta or discrete impulse function. When these two arguments are same, so delta subscript 0, and that is the value 1. So 1 minus 1 would be 0. So this term would be 0. So no distance between these two along that dimension, right? If xi is yes and say xi dash is no, in this case, delta would be 0, and this term inside the summation would be equal to 1. Right? So this is just a very brief explanation of Hamming distance. Right? And we use Hamming distance to compare, to measure the closeness between categorical variables. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about one important distance, what we call cosine distance. Although cosine distance does not satisfy those four properties, but still we use it. So cosine distance is used to find the similarities between different documents or different vectors. For example, we measure the degree of angle between two vectors, and we use this cosine distance when the magnitude between vectors does not matter, but only the orientation, because this cosine distance tells us what is the angle between the vectors. We can define this cosine distance using the definition of inner product. This x transpose x dash, so this is the inner product between x vector and x dash vector. This is also referred to as projection. That is defined as norm of x times 2 norm of x dash times cosine of theta, whereas theta is the angle between x and x dash. For example, if this vector is x, and say this vector is x dash, right? So this theta is the angle between these two vectors, right? And when you take cosine of this angle, what you get is cosine distance, right? What are the values of cosine? What are the range of values of cosine? Cosine takes values from -1 to 1, right? And how do you relate this distance with the angle, or how do you how do you interpret these values? Let me take an example. So if you have two vectors, right, and these two vectors are angle is 0, right? Angle is 0 means cosine of 0 is 1. This is cosine distance 1, cosine distance 0, and cosine distance minus 1, right? When they are orthogonal, the cosine distance is 0. When they are angle is 180 degree, pi radians, and the cosine would be minus 1, right? So minus 1, 0, 1, and then it's again start decreasing from minus 1 to 0 if you keep on going, right? So that was a quick overview of the cosine distance. I note here again that cosine distance does not satisfy the properties we require for distance. However, it is still useful, and it is still useful. It is useful when the magnitude does not matter, and you are only after the orientation between the vectors, the angle between the vectors, right? Okay. अब हम बात करते हैं some of the practical issues in computing distance, right? When you compute distance, the issue is we can have mismatch in the values of the data, right? For classification algorithms like KNN, we measure the distance between pairs of samples, right? We are measuring distances along each dimension, and obviously these distances are influenced by the measurement units also. For example, you're applying KNN on a data set that has 3 features, and say first feature ranging from 1 to 10, second from 1 to 20, and the last one ranging from 1 to say 10,000, right? And when you compute distance, the third feature would dominate, because when you say, for example, you compute equivalent distance, the squaring of the large number would just boost it, and this is going to suppress the variations in the first and second feature, right? And the solution of this is you carry out data normalization. You normalize the data such that each feature or along each dimension, you have values in the same range or on the same order, right? So I just wanted to flag that, because when you apply KNN, and we should normalize data so that the values are uh, on the same order along each dimension. Okay. Okay. So this was about distance metrics. We can also talk about how do we choose k, because k is a hyperparameter of KNN. Right? If you choose k, what does k denote? The number of neighbors you use for predictions, right? Okay. Last time in the last module, I showed you one demonstration, right, in which we talked about the decision, the Voronoi boundaries, the Voronoi decision boundaries, and we saw that when you take very small value of k, uh, we had an effect of noise. Although we are getting very very low bias, but the variance is very high because of noise. And when you keep on increasing the value of k, the decision boundary was getting smoother and smoother. Uh, and when the boundary gets smoother, in fact, you're moving towards high bias and low variance area. I will talk about this. So when k is equal to 1, our classifier, our KNN is very very sensitive to noise, and that is because it has high variance. And what is the solution? Obviously, the solution is increasing k makes it less sensitive to noise and reduces the variance in the error or variance in the misclassification. Okay, what should be how high should you go, और आप k को कितना increase करेंगे? So what is extreme? आपके पास कितने data points हैं? N. So if you take k is equal to n, how do you interpret this? Right? Say I give you a data set that only has 2 classes, and say data set contains 10,000 points, and out of those 10,000 points, 6,000 belong to has label of class A, and 4,000 of label class B. Right? If you choose k is equal to n, आपको kn क्या return करेगा? So the hint is the kn will always give you the same value. kn क्या return करता है? Label of, or the most frequent label. Right? When you take all points, because class A had 6,000 data points, and class B has 4,000 data points. So when you choose k is equal to n, kn will always give you, for any data point, it will give you label of class A. Right? The solution is you decrease k, and when you decrease k, so you are kind of capturing the variations in the data, or you're capturing finer structure in the feature space. Right? So we cannot have very large k, we cannot have very small k. So how do we choose k? Right? The rule of thumb is we should not pick too large value of k, and not too small as well. So it depends on the application. It also depends on the amount of data you have. Right? But we know one technique which we can use to learn the hyperparameter. And what is that technique? When we talked about supervised learning setup, वहाँ हमने कहा था कि हम हाइपर पैरामीटर को ढूंढने के लिए डेटा को स्प्लिट करते हैं टू पार्ट्स के अंदर. वन इज कॉल्ड ट्रेनिंग, another is called validation, because we're learning a hyperparameter. For learning a hyperparameter, we use a validation dataset. मैंने टेस्टिंग क्यों नहीं दिया यहाँ पे? Because testing is used to evaluate the performance of the classifier, right? But to learn the hyperparameter, we use validation data. Right? So let me summarize this. So we learn the best hyperparameter k using the training data. We split data into training and validation. Say we start from k is equal to 1 and keep iterating. You can take 5-fold cross validation, or you can take 10-fold cross validation. And for each value of k, we compute the loss on the validation data. So you have the training data, right? So you use training data to compute the loss on the validation data, right? And you actually plot that loss versus k, right? As you keep on increasing, k is equal to 1, k is equal to 3, k is equal to 5, k is equal to 4, k is equal to 6, 5, 6, 7, and so on and so forth. So what do you expect? The validation loss versus k would decrease to 0, and then it would start increasing, right? So you should choose the value of k where you get the minimum value of your loss on validation data, right? So we say that we choose the value of k that minimizes the validation loss. And finally, we note that k is the only parameter, k is the only hyperparameter for which we require learning in KNN. So that's all for today. We will continue our discussion in the next module. In the next module, we will talk about convergence of KNN algorithm. And we meet in the following module, we will talk about time complexity and storage complexity of KNN algorithm. Thank you very much for your time. See you inshallah. Allah Hafiz.